Good morning and welcome to the webcast. We have just a few reminders today. The slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. Should you need technical assistance, click on the Help button. You are encouraged to submit a question at any time during today's presentation by typing the Ask a Question tab and clicking Submit. In order to stay within our time, we will not be able to answer all questions individually, but all questions will be reviewed to provide future guidance. If your screen freezes or the slides do not appear to be advancing as they should, please try exiting and restarting the session, as it may be an issue with your connectivity. I will now turn the call over to Dr. Stephanie Siddons, Senior Executive Director for the Center for Curriculum and Assessment at the Ohio Department of Education. Please go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. We have a great team with us here today that will take part in this presentation, and so we will introduce ourselves as we present. But today's webinar is the second in a series of resources and webcasts that the Department of Education is planning to help schools and districts as you support students prepare to be successful in earning a high school diploma. You may be aware that we had a webcast on November 10th, and that information is posted on our website, and we'll give you that information, the resources later. But as you are aware, one of the options to earn a high school diploma is to earn an industry-approved credential and a work readiness score on WorkKeys. And today's webinar will focus on how to build pathways for students leading to industry-approved credentials. Our agenda today will talk a little bit about the graduation options. We'll talk about WorkKeys and industry-approved credentials, as well as resources that we have available on these topics. So to begin, I will focus on reviewing the two parts of graduation requirements. As you recall, we have two sets of requirements. One is around course requirements and credits that students must earn, as well as the second area, which are assessment requirements. And together, these two allow students to demonstrate their readiness to receive a high school diploma. The second graduation requirement around assessments is where students have choices. So to fulfill this requirement, students could accumulate at least 18 points together on our 7 end-of-course state tests. A second area is to earn an approved industry-recognized credential for the field you want to work in and get a score of 13 on a job skills test, which is WorkKeys. And the third option is to earn a score, a remediation-free score on the ACT or SAT that shows you are ready to take college-level courses. So for today's presentation, we're focusing on that second option, where students earn an approved industry-recognized credential and a work readiness score on WorkKeys. So I'm now going to turn it to Dr. Steve Gratz.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, and welcome everyone to what I think is going to be a fabulous webinar. And we do have a lot of great individuals in the room, and we also have some practical advice from Jamie Nash, who's with us, logged on from Pickway Ross Career Technology Center. And so let's just jump right in, and I'm going to throw the first question over to Emily Pashas. Tell us a little bit about when we think about work readiness and the WorkKeys assessment as we look at this pathway for a graduation opportunity for students.
Thank you, Steve. As we've discussed, there are two things that students need to do to qualify for a diploma under the credential pathway. They need to earn the state-approved industry-recognized credential or set of credentials that qualify for graduation, and earn a minimum score of 13 on the WorkKeys test. So let's talk a little bit about the WorkKeys assessment here before we jump into talking about credential pathways. The WorkKeys test has 3 separate sections of the test. They are reading, applied mathematics, and locating information. The reading assessment and the applied mathematics assessment are scored between 3 and 7, and the locating information section of the test is scored between 3 and 6, with a total number of available points across the 3 sections of 20 points.
So Emily, when we look at those scores, can a student actually earn below a score of 3? How would that be reported?
So if a student does not answer enough questions correctly to earn a score of 3, they get no points for that section of the test. So in order for students to qualify for graduation, they must earn a minimum score of 3 on each section of the WorkKeys assessment.
And then we know earlier this year that the State Board of Education, they set the scores that are expected for students. What are those scores?
In order to qualify for graduation, the classes of 2018 and 2019 must earn a combined score of 13 across the 3 sections of the test. And classes of 2020 and beyond need to earn a score of 14 across the 3 sections of the test. And again, they need to earn that 3-point minimum on each section of the WorkKeys assessment.
Well, that's great. And do we have access to, I know Leah Amstutz with us, Associate Director in Career Tech. We have access for resources so people can actually practice. Where can people find those?
Yes, Steve. We have a couple options that school districts can access. The first one is through Ohio Means Jobs, and in this presentation, the direct link is provided for the landing page for students to go in and take free practice tests through Ohio Means Jobs. Ohio Means Jobs also has a whole suite of other opportunities for students to engage in practice tests in some of the other areas like ACT and SAT. The second resource that's provided is ACT is the vendor for the WorkKeys assessment, and they have several materials that from sample questions to practice tests to materials that can assist in developing curriculum.
Thanks, Leah. And Stephanie, one of the things that we've chatted about in the past, that with Ohio Means Jobs, not only do they have practice tests for students on WorkKeys, but they also have practice tests for things such as ASVAB, IB, AP, ACT, and SAT. So it's a wealth of information that students have access, and as well as teachers. So I know when we do the next webinar that you'll probably want to talk about those as well. So let's dig a little bit more deeply into, we've talked, and Emily, oftentimes in our conversations, we always have to remind people that there are really 2 components to this pathway. Mm-hmm. So we know the one that you just talked about on the minimum score that they have to come up with on the WorkKeys, and now we have this one that deals with the credential. And between you and Leah, tell us a little bit about, what are the credentials, where can people find them, how did we come up with those different credentials, and I think you have some type of a point system that was put into place on that as well.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, in addition to earning the score on the work readiness assessment, students also need to earn an approved industry-recognized credential. On the Ohio Department of Education website, you'll find a list of approved credentials, and each credential is awarded a particular point value. All of the credentials on the list are tied to Ohio's in-demand jobs and have significant and ongoing demand in Ohio's labor market. There are several benefits to students earning one of those particular credentials. So students can not only learn a skill and have that skill validated for employers, but they can also use those credentials to help pay for additional post-secondary education should they want to pursue that, or get a jump start on their career after they leave school. Let's talk a little bit about what an industry credential actually is before we go further into talking about the benefits of credentials. An industry credential is recognized by industry. It's a third-party or governing board administered assessment, examination, or licensure that measures technical competency and validates the knowledge base and skills that show mastery in a specific industry. So some examples of what this might be, this could be passing an examination through a third-party vendor that awards an industry credential. It could be obtaining a state-issued professional license. There are a couple of different types of industry-recognized credentials on our approved list.
So let's go through and let's give some examples. What would be a license that an individual could use to earn to graduate?
Sure. A great example of a license that's on our list is a state cosmetology license. Students who are participating in cosmetology programs and want that to be their career path need to earn that license in order to be able to practice cosmetology in the state of Ohio.
And then we have a lot of programs out there that deal with, in arts and communication, that deal with web sites and developing, web pages, and I know Adobe is a big one. Where would Adobe credentials fall in?
So you'll see credentials in the IT field, or some that also cross over into arts and communications. You'll see those listed in sort of multiple career fields on the website. Students can really pick and choose the credentials that are most valuable to what they want to do when they leave school. So if they want to be a graphic designer, for example, they might choose to get certification in Photoshop and some of the other Adobe Suite products, whereas if they want to go maybe into a different part of IT, there's a whole slew of credentials on the list that they can really tailor to meet whatever their aspirations are for their career.
And that's a great example, because when you look at the slide, we know that the Adobe, just as an example, it does measure the technical competence of the student, and it is, in this case, very industry specific, because, and the nice thing is that we know that industry, when you did that initial search to figure out which ones apply, that initial search was really put together by industry. Industry has said, here's what we want when we're hiring individuals. And so we just called out a few, but how many different areas do students and districts have access to when it comes to Credential?
So we have more than 200 approved credentials on the list that fall into 13 different career fields. Students can choose from credentials in everything from agriculture to transportation, whatever meets their career goals. It's also, though, important to note that not all industries use industry credentials to validate knowledge and skills, and students who are interested in those fields should be encouraged to participate in high-quality work-based learning experiences or other types of learning opportunities to pursue their career goals.
Are there any requirements for students to earn an industry credential? And do they have to be enrolled in a certain class to earn that credential, or how can they pick up a credential?
Students can pick up a credential in a number of different ways. There's no requirement that they be enrolled in any particular class at their high school or at a career center. They can pursue those credentials on their own time outside of school and still use them to qualify for graduation. In just a few minutes, we're going to talk about a couple of different ways that schools can help students earn those industry credentials through programming at local high schools and career centers.
And that's a great point, Emily, because one of the things we know, some of our licenses actually require so many classroom hours of instruction, and then many of the credentials, there really isn't an hour requirement, and so the student may be able to learn this, from a post-secondary institution, some type of an online education to pick those or earn those credentials. And so we do have a couple examples that we put up here, and here's one that's talking about an STNA, or a state-tested nursing assistant. And one of the things when these were developed, it was really focused on what's in demand. And that in-demand list came from the Governor's Office of Workforce Transformation. And so we really targeted those as the in-demand industries. And Emily, you and your staff put that list together of those credentials. And that was what was really on a statewide basis. But how do we address regional demand?
Sure. So there are sort of two ways that we identify credentials for the list. One is this very in-depth search of job listings and looking at what employers across the state are looking for in terms of finding industry credentials. The other way is if we have credentials that are sort of regionally used or regionally specific. We do have an application process for statewide stakeholders. That could be parents, that could be business people, educators, students even, to submit an application for us to consider to add a credential to the list. And those credentials can be, as long as they are regionally used and there's significant and ongoing demand for those credentials, we can consider those for addition to the credential list.
How often do you update that list?
That list is updated annually, and that application window is actually open right now through December 31st. So if there are folks out listening to the webcast today who would like to suggest additional credentials for the list, please take advantage of the opportunity to submit an application, and we'll review those early next year.
So STNA is on the list. We also have another example that is dealing with the National Health Career Association, called it a farm tech, as we often refer to it. And another, again, an in-demand job. You can see what the median salary is. We have a lot of openings, not quite as many as STNA, but nevertheless, both the STNA and the farm tech, those, I believe, Emily, are both worth 12 points. And so this is a program that, and you're going to get into this, of how somebody could actually put a program in place that students could earn these if, and one of the things that we always want to make sure that people do is that it's part of the student's career goals. Yeah. You know, we don't want people just to chase a credential. Let's make it part of it. But one of the things we talk about in the office, even like with the STNA and phlebotomy, is that if students really have that goal of being in a healthcare field, it's advantageous to them to pick up those credentials as they continue to work maybe toward an RN, because we just know that it can kind of serve, we talk about it, it's kind of that insurance policy. It can help students. So I know there's other benefits, so why don't you jump in and talk about the other benefits for students when they earn an industry credential?
So there's a number of benefits to students individually. First of all, obviously, they're qualifying for their high school diploma when they earn a credential. They're also learning real-world knowledge and skills. They're learning about the labor market and their particular area of interest. They can leverage those credentials to jumpstart their career. And some credentials also qualify for post-secondary credit when they go on to post-secondary education. For school districts, in addition to helping students qualify for graduation, students who earn 12 points worth of credentials are given credit. School districts get credit for them in the Prepared for Success measure on the school and district report cards. So that's not only are you helping students get past that finish line for graduation, but also getting credit in another part of the accountability system. And then obviously there's great benefit to Ohio communities and Ohio employers when they've got a pipeline of qualified, skilled employees coming out of Ohio public schools.
So point of clarification, you talked, we had a slide up there a little bit ago that showed the 13 different career fields. You talk about 12 points. Do those 12 points all have to come from one career field? Can they cross career fields?
Students who are choosing to bundle a group of credentials together need to earn 12 credential points within the same career field. The goal here is that students walk out of high school with a coherent set of credentials that they can leverage in the labor market rather than a mishmash of things that don't really fall together coherently. And we want students to be able to advance their career aspirations and not have sort of a collection of a random assortment of credentials.
And I know that your staff worked together when we looked at those 13 career fields. If there's a credential that may happen to fall within more than one, you listed that credential in all of the career fields in which it applies, correct?
Correct. We do try to make sure that we are including credentials that are sort of cross career fields in all relevant categories. If there is a credential that you think might be valuable to list in a career field that's not currently listed in, that's something we're certainly, that's a pretty easy fix for us on our end, and we can consider those requests. Just shoot us an email.
Well, let's delve into how we get one of these programs started.
Sure.
So let's ask Leah Amstutz to talk a little bit about, you know, when we talk about a career pathway, and what it means for us to actually put a program together. And I know, Leah, you just started a web page on ODE's website that's speaking to this, and we'll show you that link later on. But before we go in, we just want to show, here's an example of a career pathway that we've developed. These our staff and Career Connections have put these together in cooperation with the Ohio Department of Higher Education and the Governor's Office of Workforce Transformation. This is one that deals in a health career pathway, health science, and all of these different, this is really a pathway because how we've really changed We no longer just prepare students for that entry-level career, that first job, but we really want to make sure they have the skill set that they can not only get that job, but then continue to move through and along that pathway. So here's an example of one that before a student walks out of high school, Leah, they could actually earn the phlebotomy license or that credential, and I know we have several different providers, and what I mean by that, third-party credentialing agencies when it comes to phlebotomy. So they can earn that, and then they can go on for an associate degree and get that medical lab tech, and even move on for a bachelor's degree or a PhD and become in medicine. They can become a nursing assistant, a physician's assistant, all sorts of different. So when we talk about a pathway, that's how we're really starting to put this together. But if somebody wants to put one of these into school, why don't you share with us what the three different options that they have to put that into school?
Yes, Steve. So there are, as he mentioned, three options for schools to look at integrating or creating these pathways for students to access. The first way is to integrate it, the credential within already kind of existing courses, or create maybe a new elective course that are already established in the school system. The second way would be to create a senior-only credential program that would really focus on providing a certain amount of time within a student's senior year that would allow them to learn the content to achieve the identified industry credential. And then the last way is implementing a traditional career technical education program from that standpoint. And I now would like to have Emily share a little bit more on how to go about identifying credentials that could potentially be integrated within the school.
Sure. So as Leah mentioned, you can start helping your students earn industry credentials through a number of different programmatic options within a high school. One of them is just to integrate the content from a particular credential into existing courses that are already happening at your high school. The sort of key steps that you need to go through here is that you need to, first of all, identify credentials that are in demand in your area. I always recommend reaching out to your career technical education leadership. They can help sort of simplify this process for you and identifying what the in-demand credentials are in your area. And then look at the courses that you have available in your schools and see where you might be able to integrate some of the content from the credentials into existing coursework. Some examples might be, your science curriculum, particularly courses around biology or anatomy and physiology, might be great places to integrate content related to some of our health science and health career industry credentials.
So Emily, you shared a little bit about flexibility and delivery and being able to integrate, identify credential in an existing course. What are some other options that school districts might have to access in thinking of creating pathways?
Sure. Schools can also, in addition to sort of integrating the coursework into existing classes, they can also create additional courses within their school building or school district to deliver the credential material. They can also use College Credit Plus as a mechanism to get students the relevant coursework to be qualified to earn an industry credential. So for example, if a credential requires a particular college-level class, that's something that students in high school can obtain through our College Credit Plus program. So there's a lot of flexibility around making sure that students can get the educational side of the qualifications for their particular credential of interest.
So Emily, let's transition the conversation and talk about some potential options through career technical education where potentially career technical education supplemental funds could be generated. The first option is the senior-only credential program. Can you tell me a little bit more about what a senior-only credential program is?
I sure can. So once we got our new graduation requirements in place, one of the things that we wanted to be able to do was address how we could help students get industry-recognized credentials. So we've created a program called our Senior-Only Credential Program that offers schools some flexibility in the delivery of career technical education programming that leads specifically to a credential. Senior-only programs do generate career tech supplemental dollars, so schools who implement new senior-only programs are eligible to receive additional funding for those programs. Senior-only programs should be geared towards having students earn a 12-point credential or a group of credentials that bundle to 12 points. Folks who are implementing senior-only programs also have some flexibility around the educators that they can employ to teach those programs. For example, you could use a licensed career technical education instructor that you have currently working in your school or district. But you could also use another teacher with a professional license who also has the industry credential they would be teaching. I've heard from one school district said they learned through sort of thinking about this process of credentials that they have a math teacher who is also an EMT and has that certification already and would be eligible to help students earn that credential. So you can leverage teachers that you have in your building who also have the industry credential that they would be teaching.
And Emily, when you talk about that, that's called a 12-hour teaching permit that we have on the books, that if somebody would want to use that type of a credential, and so when I say credential in that sense, it's the teaching license. But we know if somebody wants to offer STNA, phlebotomy, if they have somebody who's an RN could easily come in and actually teach that class, correct?
Absolutely. As long as the individual who's teaching the course has either a professional teaching license or the 12-hour teaching permit and is qualified to teach the credential because they hold the credential, then they will qualify to teach a senior-only program, and the program will receive Career Tech supplemental funding.
So if somebody's going to go through and want to talk about a senior-only credential program, what's one of the first things they need to be able to? What should they do first?
If they want to start a senior-only credential program, first and foremost, I always encourage them to reach out to their leadership in their career technical planning district. We are also happy to help people think through here at the department how they might set up those programs. Leah Amstutz is a great contact in terms of helping people think through what credentials might work best. But identifying that credential that's of need and that you think you have students who would be interested in pursuing that credential is sort of your first step. And then career tech leadership in your district or folks here at the department can help you walk through the process of getting approved for the funding for that program.
So, one of the things we want to do now is we want to transition to some real examples that have actually taken place. So we're going to invite Jamie Nash, who's the Director of Secondary Education at Pickaway Ross Career and Technology Center, to share a little bit about what they've done down in their, what we call a CTPD, or Career Technical Planning District. So, Jamie, are you with us today?
Yeah, good morning, Steve.
Hey, how are you, Jamie? Why don't you go ahead and give us a little insight on some of the work that you've done down in your Career Technical Planning District.
Okay, well, we began to do some implementation last year and went into full implementation at the beginning of this school year. I think it's really important for the audience to know that it's super important to contact your Career Tech Planning District right out of the gate, because these folks have been doing industry credentials for numerous years. We have a very strong Ohio Technical Center, known as Adult Education, of course, OTCs. We've partnered with them right out of the gate here at Pickaway Ross. We wanted to have some conversations about what all they already offered, and then did an alignment on the secondary side of industry approved credentials at 12 points. And that was really the key, was to have those communications early with our my colleague, Carrie Fife. She's our adult director. Carrie and I really looked at the alignment. We already had several people working for adult education from business and industry that had the ability to give out those 12-point industry credentials. So that was the key from the beginning. Emily brought up some great points. You really have to know what your regional needs are. Steve, me and you've talked about this over the years. You really have to talk to your business and industry partners, find out what those needs are. there's no need to get a kid a 12-point credential if they can't get a job within that region. And in Appalachia, Ohio, we know for a fact a high percentage of our kids don't leave Appalachia, Ohio. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide them with an opportunity to obtain a 12-point credential, get a WorkKeys assessment score, and be able to be successful with this program. The slide that's on there right now was our first alignment. Those are the programs that we're offering first semester. We're going to repeat those again second semester. Well, we all know, giving everybody a little bit of history here, what we know, a lot of seniors that are basically, they've already met their graduation requirements or they're aligned to meet their graduation requirements. They have a lot of idle time their senior year. Sometimes they have a little bit of fluff built into their schedules. I know this from personal experience. I got a son that's a senior right now. He leaves every day at 1 o'clock. That won't continue second semester. He'll be participating in one of these industry credentials, of course. But this gives the kid an opportunity, and I think this is what's important. Regardless of what pathway they're going after high school, this gives them an opportunity to learn an industry credential that's aligned with an Ohio in-demand job. Even if they go on to post-secondary education, the military, or straight to work, these credentials can land them a job. And I think that's what's important for students to know, parents to know, and grandparents to know.
And Jamie, that's an important part, and I have a tendency to tell people that for a myriad of reasons that, out of every 100 students that go straight on to college from high school, 34 of those individuals persist and graduate on time. And so, regardless what the reason is, these credentials, if somebody's interested, and most of the ones that you have up here, if somebody's interested in becoming like an RN, a lot of these credentials will help that individual land that job until they get back, re-enrolled into college or back on track, because somebody may have to step out to take care of an ailing parent, whatever it may be. This will help them, land one of those in-demand jobs. And we know you saw some of the salary earnings that people had earlier, and they were all well in that mid-20 range. Before we transition, there's one thing. In that last column, you have this thing called CT2, and you have an asterisk. What does that CT2, and when you look at those hours, what does that mean? Because we haven't talked much about that yet.
Well, what we did, Steve, Carrie Fife, our adult director, and I, we really treated this like a college credit plus system. A lot of our credentials that are listed there on the secondary side and the adult side, you can obtain college credit. And so we actually kind of treat this like a college credit plus program. Honestly, it's the exact same thing. And the reason I say that is because an OTC is a post-secondary institution that can provide college credit. And so, when we market this, and marketing is very, very important, we want to be able to, first of all, we designed this to reach out to kids that would have never came to the Career Tech Center. It was really designed for kids who stayed back at the home schools for various reasons, different variables. Lots of times it's around sports or extracurricular activities. We want to make sure they understand this can align to college credit. This can align to the next stage of life, going on to post-secondary education. And Steve, your examples is targeted. You got a young lady or a young man going to become an RN. Well, if you get that STNA certification and you begin to work in that field and get that experience while you're going to school as well, me and you both know that is very, very valuable. Anytime you come out of a post-secondary center or a college, 4-year college or a 2-year college, whatever it may be, if you have the experience, plus you have a credential, plus you have a degree, my lands, I mean that's great for that young individual. A lot of times.
Jamie, I'm going to look at the slide real quickly. When you look at the Farm Tech, just so people understand, I'm looking at the Farm Tech. You're saying the students need to have 620 hours of instruction. It's on the ODE credential list, that approved list. It's also on the Ohio Department of Higher Education list, which was part of the qualification that we had in statute. The students, once they earn that Farm Tech, they receive 12 points. And in addition to that, when they enroll in college, if it's a college that there's an articulation agreement with, that student will also earn 13 credit hours at that post-secondary institution. Am I reading that chart correctly?
That is correct. And that's through that is through the Department of Higher Education with our adult education programs. And all your OTCs have the ability to do that alignment with your secondary education folks. Great.
So one of the things, and we're going to jump to the next slide because you talked about marketing. So if somebody's starting one of these programs, what did you do to market these programs? Because I believe, Jamie, you put most of these programs into your associate schools. And so talk about how you help market the programs.
Well, what we did with, and it was very important right out of the gate to meet with our counselors at all of our associate schools. So we did that at the beginning. We worked through a lot of different issues. I will tell you that it's not fun at first, especially when you're dealing with some EMA stuff that you have to deal with. But you want to make sure that you begin to have those conversations early with your associate schools. We met with our counselors. We explained the process. We explained the programs. We went on the radio, local radio shows, newspapers, websites, Facebook, Twitter, just to begin the marketing campaign. I will tell you from experience, we still need to do a lot of work here. There's a lot of there's still kind of a negative cloud about career technical education across the community, and we need to make sure that the kids that we were going after with this understands how rich and how much rigor these industry credentials are and what they actually can do for them.
And Jamie, why don't you give us a little bit sense of the timeline? Because, right now districts, we're in December. Some people are already starting to think about scheduling if they haven't already started that process. So what kind of timeline did you have in place when you put the program in this past year?
Well, we did we did a little pilot last spring, and which would have been our second semester of last school year, just to kind of see how things worked out, especially with our EMIS and Progress Book and Dazzle, teacher license. And then we began to get real aggressive probably right around May and June. We did meet with our counselors last year before school let out from our associate schools. So you're going to want to give yourself a lot of time to build this. I'm going to say, Steve, that we probably started getting pretty aggressive last April, May, and then all the way through the summer and into the fall first semester this year. We really do believe our numbers are going to grow substantially the second semester. I'm always a little bit more optimistic than most people. I want to serve around 100 kids. We'll see where we're at here in the next 30 days or so.
That's great. And Jamie, talk about, I think we're going to jump to the next slide. One of the things that you've talked about is, today you've talked about how you've expanded the program. What are the lessons that you've learned that you may want to share with folks, and especially as you look at taking those next steps of maybe putting in more senior-only credential programs?
Yeah, the senior industry credential programs we put in place right now, Steve, are all through our adult education programs. Pickaway Ross now has 3 campuses. We've grown. We used to have just one main campus. We've purchased 2 other buildings. We put one in Pickaway County up in Circleville, and we have another building that's in Chillicothe. Our adult education folks are in those 2 buildings. That's where our expansion grew this year with the senior industry credential programs. Our goal is to let all of our associate schools know, based off their needs, we can bring it to them. We can actually bring a person from business and industry or from our school district, current employee, to them based off their need. I think that's important for school districts to know, to work close with your CTPD. Like I said, they've been in business for a long time around industry credentials. The adult education system for Pickaway Ross fits this system like a glove. And we're excited about that because we really truly believe that this partnership between secondary and adult education can really take senior credential programs to the next level as we move forward.
And Jamie, I think that's a critical thing, and just to hopefully maybe I just want to clarify, when you talk about your Ohio Technical Center or your adult education, the OTC program that you have, working with Carrie Fife, the credentials that you're offering to your high school students, right now, the students who graduate out of any of your associate schools or especially the Career Center, those students that walk out one of these senior-only credential, they have the opportunity to go to a post-secondary institution and take those credits along with them. But they can also go directly into your adult education program and continue along the pathway where they're going to earn additional credentials. And because of the agreements that we have with our OTCs and the Department of Higher Education, those individuals can also earn their applied associate, I think it's called an applied associate degree, correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding too, Steve. And I'll tell you, we're starting to get, I'm kind of excited about this, and I know Carrie is too. A lot of our kids that we've reached out to, once again, those weren't the typical kids that would come to our Career Center at the main campus. These are kids that were staying back. And what we're finding out is these kids are looking at the OTC, the Adult Education Program, as their post-secondary option. So they're building credentials. They're starting with us, and they're continuing that with the OTCs. And, I mean, that's pretty exciting because I'm going to let everyone know now. I mean, I've got 2 kids enrolled in state colleges. It's not cheap. And the OTCs bring a powerful product to our workforce. And I really do believe in my heart that career technical education can fill that hole for our state.
That's great. And Jamie, just in case, and we're going to have to move on due to time, but if people, I'm flashing your information up there on the screen. Is it okay that we share that with people?
Yeah, absolutely. I probably get about 3 phone calls a week regarding senior credential programs. I think we've had probably about a half a dozen CTPDs come down and visit us. This is something that I believe is really going to take career technical education to the next level. Steve, the other thing, too, is I want people to know this, and I'll close with this. This was originally designed for kids that were aligned to graduate high school already. The new graduation requirements for kids to get an industry credential and get a WorkKeys assessment, those kids that need serious remediation and intervention, this system will work with them as well. And we're going to begin to unpack that new system going into next school year.
Well, Jamie, thank you so much for sharing, and I hope people feel free to reach out to him and listen to his advice. I mean, he's one of the early adopters, and of course, few people know, but I will just say that Jamie used to be on our staff as an associate director in Career Tech, and he was instrumental in designing this program. And I think what he did is he designed something that he liked so well that he said, I need to go back home and implement this because it's exciting. So, Jamie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Steve, for having me.
So let's go in, and one of the things that Jamie, we really wanted to talk to people about how they build this senior-only credential, and I want to clean up a little bit, and be it Leah or Emily, we know that probably the strongest way to do this is by working with our Career Technical Planning District. And Leah, you had on one of the slides that people could also do this through College Credit Plus. So I'm going to talk through this, and you tell me if I got it down right. We know we have a lot of students that are participating in College Credit Plus across the state, over 52,000 from last year, and I don't know what the data is for this year. But if a student also picks up an industry credential that aligns with our list, Emily, at the Institute of Higher Education, can they use that credential, Leah, to help graduation also?
They can.
Yeah. So, take that into consideration because, it doesn't have to happen. What Jamie did is he explained what model that we really endorse and we like, but there are other options. And earlier, and I want to go back and revisit it, Emily, and speak to a little bit more of this. People can do this without going forward through a career technical education. Now, understand, there may not be the incentives of the extra dollars and some of those things that you and Jamie were talking about. But give the example again and highlight that. If somebody's in like a anatomy and physiology class or an advanced health class or a science class, how can they couple that with an industry credential?
Yeah, absolutely. Folks who have courses in place at their high school right now can absolutely integrate the content from the credential that they've chosen into one or more courses over the course of the high school career. It doesn't have to fall strictly within a career technical education program. Steve, like you mentioned, we have really sort of 3 ways that people can get the programming in a high school for students to do this. They can do a traditional career technical education program. They can do a senior-only program, or they can integrate this content into existing courses across the high school experience, not just in the senior year, but across all 4 years of high school. They can really take a comprehensive pathways approach to the high school experience and get kids the necessary knowledge and skills and experience to earn these credentials.
Great. And so when we talk about flexibility, there really is a lot of flexibility. Dr. Siddons, I want to ask you a question. When it comes to, we know we have the 3 pathways. What do students who elect to do the industry credential and WorkKeys, do they still have to take the end-of-course assessments? Do they still have to take ACT or SAT? Do they still have to earn the 20 credits in the curriculum standards? And you may want to call upon your fellow colleagues here, Brian and Jim, to help you out if you need to.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. And I'll just start and let Jim Wright add or clarify anything. But yes, students do, as I mentioned in the beginning, as we talked about what is part of attaining a high school diploma, there are course and credit requirements as well as assessment requirements. There are important requirements for students to take assessments related to accountability purposes for school districts, and then as well as students taking courses. I'm going to ask Jim if he would like to add anything as well. But yes, for the ACT, SAT, all juniors are required to take in the spring of their junior year the either ACT or SAT, depending on what the district has selected.
I think you covered it mainly, Stephanie, and thanks. But the only thing I would add is the fact that these pathways should work together to provide students with as many opportunities as possible, so that at any point they can find what their interest is, and they're going to have the background, whether it be the curricular side, the end-of-course side, the ACT, SAT for college. But this is all about creating opportunities for students, and so it's not expected that a student's going to enter high school with an idea of which pathway. We're going to have many students that probably will meet multiple pathways. They may meet all 3. So, this is about providing opportunities for students.
That's a great point, Jim. And it really is one of those, as opposed to saying which pathway do you want to, if I'm a school leader, I'm going to look at students and say, we want to be able to graduate through be eligible through all 3 pathways for that to happen. So, we want to start to maybe entertain some questions. I think we've done a nice job. Leah, Emily, anything that you want to add in summary, or do you just want to kind of turn over to the questions and see what some of the people are asking out in the field?
While we gather our questions, I would also like to just let folks know about some of the resources that are available for them to get started on industry-recognized credential programs in their high schools. We're launching a new website today with resources on how schools can implement credential programs within their schools. It really has quite a bit of information there. And then, of course, you can always reach out to Leah Amstutz, Dr. Gratz, to myself, or you can email industrycredentials@education.ohio.gov, and we're happy to help you think through starting a program. I also want to let folks know that if you go to the graduation requirements webpage where the industry credentials list lives, we have also added links to every single industry credential that will take you to the website of the governing body of that credential. So, for example, if you're interested in the Adobe certifications for a student, if you go to the credential list, you can click on that Adobe certification and it will take you to their website to help folks identify the actual requirements and the governing bodies of all those credentials. We've made that information available on the web.
Good deal. So let's go through a few questions. I think we have a few minutes, and let's see what we have.
Thanks very much, Steve. Our first question asks, does the industry credential have to be earned before taking the WorkKeys test?
No, the industry credential does not have to be earned prior to taking the WorkKeys test. There's no required sequencing there. So the student can take the WorkKeys test first. They can earn the credential first. Whatever works best for the student, and that's fine by us.
And they can take that which year? 9th, 10th, 11th?
The WorkKeys?
Yeah.
Students can take the WorkKeys whenever they are ready to take the WorkKeys. We do recommend that students wait until the junior or senior year for students to take that assessment, because the state does pay for one administration of the WorkKeys. But if the student should want to retake or take subsequent administrations of that test, that would be either at the cost of the district or at the cost of the student. So we do recommend that they wait till the junior or senior year when we believe students will be most ready to be successful on that test.
Thanks very much. Are there tests for each credential? For example, the Microsoft Office Specialist is 3 points, but do the students earn the points by just taking the class, or is there a test the students earn to take the points?
That is a great question. Students must actually take the assessment. So in that example, for Microsoft, they would need to actually take the Microsoft Excel credentialing test to earn those 3 points. So just taking a course is not sufficient to meet the graduation requirement. They do need to take the governing body exam and pass that test to earn the industry credential.
And I want to jump in on that. That's an essential one because, and I don't know that credential very well, but the required part would be earning the credential. The required part wouldn't be actually taking the class.
Exactly.
And some of these credentials, Emily, are really expensive, just like the one that we just talked about. It's about $190. And if you have to take 4 of those tests, you could see that you're going to have a little bit of an expense there. Do we have any provisions to help districts when it comes to reimbursement on credentials?
We sure do. So students who take industry credential examinations who are also economically disadvantaged, the State Department of Education will reimburse the cost of those credentials to school districts for those economically disadvantaged students. So we do have a little bit of relief there in terms of the cost of the credentialing exams for districts.
And I know in the state budget there's $1 million that has been set aside, and so should we surpass that reimbursement, I know they will be prorated.
That is correct.
Okay, so there is some ability to help those who are economically disadvantaged. Michael, you have another question?
Yes, and this will be our last question before we end this morning's session.
Oh.
Thank you very much. But we do encourage individuals, of course, to access the resources available on the webpage listed here. In addition, we've had questions regarding the session being available later. Yes, this is being recorded, so we will have that link to share with you so you may view it and share with your colleagues. For individuals or staff at a comprehensive high school, how do they find those, quote, third-party tests? They're thinking of course, the Adobe series or other IT tests.
That's a really good question, and the website that we updated website that Emily shared earlier in our presentation has several different links to different opportunities in starting those programs, but on our industry credential list itself, we've updated where if you hover over the name of the credential, you can click on it and it will take you to the landing page or the home page of the certifying agent, where it will then begin to give you the details of each individual requirements of the credential for the third party. So that is now updated on our website.
And just a bit of clarification, and Emily, let me know if I'm wrong, but when somebody starts one of these credential programs, if they're doing it through like Career Tech or not through Career Tech, we don't provide them with a curriculum. That curriculum is coming either from the third-party credentialing agency, or there's going to be a list of competencies that may go along with that. It could be a state license or something along those lines. So we don't tell people, here's what you have to teach. They really need to rely on what is the expectation from that credential or that license as they develop their curriculum. And we tell them, the metric that we're looking for, they have to earn that credential.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. We're not. The key here is that these credentials are in demand from Ohio businesses because they validate the knowledge and skill of these students. So this is not curriculum that's coming from the department. This is the expectation set forth by the credentialing body. So you'll be teaching students to do or learn the competencies that are required by the governing body that will help students be successful on that particular assessment.
If somebody wants to do this through career technical education, be able to garner some of those extra supplemental dollars, is there a process that they have to go through to apply for that?
There sure is a process. It's a process that we call the process the CTE 26 process. I know our career technical education folks are absolutely familiar with that process and would be happy to assist any school or district in their area in completing that process. But there is an application process to really ensure that you will receive the state funds for the program that you're running.
That's great, and I know that deadline is coming up when it's the March 1 that all has to be in, and some of the career technical planning district leads more than willing to help, and so it's a great opportunity. Michael, thank you for the opportunity to do such a wonderful webinar today.
Thanks very much to our presentation team, and of course, thanks to everyone for watching this morning. Steve, thank you very much, and I'll ask Stephanie Siddons for any closing comments before we wrap up.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Steve, Leah, and Emily for the very nice presentation. As I indicated earlier, this is the second in a series of webinars that we have been holding related to resources and tools for graduation requirements. We want to thank everyone for joining us today, and make sure you know how we appreciate all of the hard work you're engaged in to helping students be successful. Again, we've shared a lot of information and resources that are available on our website, and we'll continue to update those resources. So again, we encourage you to check in frequently, and we will publicize information on our upcoming webcasts as well. I'll now turn it back to Michael Jordy.
Great. Thanks again, everyone. This concludes our session.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's webcast. Thank you for participating.